I was working in this bookshop, moving around these thousands of copies of Mills and Boon romances for ladies in the, the suburbs, and I was going to the theatre a lot. All the West End theatres and so on, but my favourite theatre was the National Theatre at the Old Vic. Laurence Olivier was running it, Maggie Smith was in the company, Mike Gambon, Derek Jacobi, John Gielgud. I mean, it was just a miraculous place. And so I just suddenly thought how wonderful it would be to work in a place like this with, everybody seemed to be involved in it, not just the actors, but the front of house staff, the people selling coffee, the people in the box office and so on. So I wrote Laurence Olivier a 3 foolscap page letter, closely typed, in which I explained to him what a wonderful theatre he was running. And I think I might have ended with the phrase like, "It makes one proud to be British," or something. And by return of post came back a postcard from him saying, "If you like it so much, why don't you come and work here? We have a job in the box office." So I went to work in the box office at the Old Vic, and that just immediately my whole life just stood on its head, because I met actors. I'd never met an actor in my life before, and I went backstage and I sneaked into the back of rehearsals and things like that, and I thought, my God, this is a wonderful, wonderful job to do this job. It wasn't anything to do with the glamour, it was just the fact that people, were sitting around on stage trying to figure out how to make this play work. And I thought, that's a great way to spend your life. So I thought, then what shall I do? Shall I go to drama school? I thought, well, I'm too old for that, because I was already 19, oh my God. And then I thought, maybe I'll go to amateur theatre. But that was obviously a bad idea, but because I knew I would have picked up all kinds of bad tricks. And then I thought, well, there are lots of actors who go to university and learn how to act there. Ian McKellen and people like that, I'd heard about it. So I thought, I'll go to university. So I went to university. I went to the Queen's University in Belfast, and the moment I got there, I joined the Drama Society of the university, and when they discovered that I'd worked in the box office of the National Theatre for Laurence Olivier, they gave me the leading part in the play immediately. I'd never acted before in my life. So I did it, and it was one of the great turning points of my life, because I stood on stage and I knew that I was crap. Absolute total crap. So if I was going to make a go of it, I had to go and find out how to do it. I suppose it is true to say that Laurence Olivier was a great inspiration to me. Not only was he a sublime actor, an extraordinary actor, it's impossible to describe to people what he was actually like on stage, because when you see him on film, it's larger than life and it's kind of quite impressive, but you can't imagine what it was like to see him actually there on the stage. He was like a panther with a very good sense of humour, because he was a brilliant comedian as well. And it was electrifying, and he was a leader. He led the British theatre, and he certainly created the National Theatre, and he directed those movies, and was an incredibly powerful figure. And all of us, anybody who was born during his time and came to the business in his time, had a relationship to Laurence Olivier. Some people hated his acting, but everybody knew that he was a person of huge stature, and that was fantastic. And so I've been inspired by a lot of his values, his love of the company, his love of excitement in the theatre. It's something I anyway love very much. So he has been a bit of a guiding light. Not in my acting. My acting is nothing like Laurence Olivier's, alas. Well, I mean, it speaks for itself, really, doesn't it? I mean, you can imagine, if you read that character, why you would want to play him. And yes, it had success written all over it. I absolutely knew that it would be a huge success in England and in America. What was surprising was that it was a success, for example, just the week it opened in Paris, I happened to be there, and there were queues around the block, and there were no stars in it. We forget, because they became stars subsequently. Kristen Scott Thomas and Hugh Grant and so on were absolutely unknown, and that people just smelt success on that movie. And then a bit later, I did a film in Tahiti. They were queuing around the block in Tahiti. I directed a show in Tokyo, queuing around the block in Tokyo. Now that's an unusual film that has that kind of an appeal and an attraction. So, but I couldn't have predicted that. But you certainly knew that if it wasn't a big success, we would have really loused it up big time. It would have been our fault because it was a great script. But he's a wonderful director, Mike Newell, so there was no way that was going to happen. And the character was very attractive to me, all kinds of reasons. He was a gay man who was not a stereotype at all. He was in this very loving relationship with the character that John Hannah played, called Matthew. And it was at the time of AIDS. And the great thing is that he died not of AIDS, but of Scottish dancing. I've always thought that the film should be described as a government health warning against the perils of Scottish dancing. I nearly died doing the Scottish dancing, I can tell you. Funnily enough, I remember particularly one year at Christmas reading the Nativity story, you know. And my mother told me afterwards, but I knew it even while it was happening. We were sitting, you know, like 8 of us kids were reading. And we were on a platform, and parents and other kids out front. And they were reading, the kids were reading, not well at all, it has to be said. And I was, as usual, I mean, I just couldn't, you know, like Boris Johnson, I couldn't sort of keep myself still for a second. My hair was all over the place, and knowing that they weren't very good and all the rest of it. Shocking behaviour. But I wasn't doing it because I wanted to, you know, make life hard for them. I couldn't keep myself together. And then it came to me to read. And I had this, you know, starring passage about the, you know, little baby in the manger and all the rest of it. And I read it, and the whole audience just fell silent and listened. And I felt this strange power. And it was a wonderful thing. And I always think of acting as storytelling. Well, I think in my case, anyway, it may not be so with everybody, but in my case it is with the idea of telling stories, you know. And you think, boy, have I got a great story for you tonight. And you're always trying to make sure that people get it, you know, without being heavy-handed about it or laying it on with the trowel. You just want to make sure each little piece of the story adds something, and you've got to sort of make sure that it lands properly. So that's what you're thinking of, really, all the time, is how to... you've got to get the audience up to speed, because after all, an audience comes into the theatre or comes to dinner like this, having had a hard day at work, having been on the tube or in a car or whatever, however they've come here, it's been stressful. They've been thinking about 100 other things. They probably left the house in a rush, or they left the office in a rush, or something like that, had a quick drink at the bar, a couple of peanuts, and check the mobile phone 10 times, and then finally, even as the curtain's going up, they're putting the phone in the bag, if you're lucky. Very often nowadays they don't do you that courtesy, but putting the phone away like this, and then thinking, what is this? Which play are we coming to see, darling? Which one was it we booked for? As the curtain goes up. So you've got to reclaim them in that moment. You've got to draw them in. You've got to start, and if they miss the first 5 minutes of the play because they're not really with it, then they're going to find it hard. It's like a joke, you know. You just have to hear the first line and follow it all the way through, otherwise you're sunk. So part of what's called stagecraft is exactly that: is to just draw people's concentration in, so that things happen. That it can be done in a musical by huge energy. You know, although I'm not such a believer in that, but it can be done by waking people up, so everybody goes, oh yeah, oh great, yes, this is that. Or you can become in quite quiet, so people go, hey, what was he saying? That's interesting. So you start to get people moving forward in their seats like this. That's the trick. As the German writer Brecht always used to say, you know, he wanted people on the edge of his seat, of their seats like that, going, oh, he said he wanted his audiences to be like people at a boxing match, going, what, oh my God, rather than just sitting back and letting it wash over you. You know? People always think that things go wrong in the theatre, but they don't very often. So but in rep things used to go wrong because nobody had any time. And certainly when I was doing A Christmas Carol in Lincoln, and I was playing Mr. Fezziwig and Bob Cratchit in different scenes, there came the big scene of the Fezziwig's ball, you know, and everyone's singing "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen" and dashing around doing these kind of Victorian dances and so on. And Mrs. Fezziwig and I were being particularly jolly that afternoon, and suddenly we fell through the floor. We fell 16 foot through the floor. And when we realised that we weren't actually dead, which was a relief, and we looked up and we saw 12 actors peering down into this hole. Just horror. And someone would go to the stage manager to bring the curtain in, but the stage manager was also completely polarized and did nothing. And eventually one smart guy said, "Well then, Mr. Fezziwig, down in the wine cellar again, I see." Bless him. And so we decided, well, we've got to get out of here somehow. And there were sort of metal rungs on the side of the. And so we kind of got up through, and our heads appeared, you know, out of this hole. What the children in the Theatre Royal in Lincoln thought was going on, I have no idea. Probably they thought it was always like this. But of course, in falling through, I'd lost my wig and my glasses. And so, to all intents and purposes, the person who fell into the hole was Mr. Fezziwig. The person who came out was Bob Cratchit. So eventually we got out and we carried on dancing. I mean, and then Thea, the woman who's playing my wife, Thea and I just lay down in the wings and laughed in that kind of painful laughter way. It's not really funny. It's just you're rigid with laughter. Oh God, it was agony.